Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Global Script, and you're watching Ocean News. Let's get back to the discussion. There is I would say, a rumor, or maybe there is a growing narrative in Balochistan that the Chinese or all the global powers or anyone who wants to invest in Balochistan is after the Baloch resources, and they want to have the foreign boots on ground. They want to have foreign soldiers in Balochistan, and that's why this whole thing is getting aggravated, and the international interests in Balochistan are being challenged. Do you see that in near or far future, there would be international boots on ground, there would be international forces looking after the interests of them, like I'm talking about America and I'm talking about China? Would there be in any near future? Do you see that there would be American soldiers protecting an American refinery or an American mining company, or Chinese army protecting Gawada?
Shawad Sahab, that's a great question, a very important question, and something to be pondered about, because we don't know the future, because that's looking into the future. But as scholars and analysts, we can say, judging from the history that we share, that when these great powers, some of them are semi-colonial in their nature, when they are after economic objectives, they pursue economic objectives quite ruthlessly. And in order to get to these economic objectives, it could be oil, it could be, in Pakistan's case, rare earth materials, they are prepared to then literally come in like a bull in a china shop and scatter everything in front of them to get to these objectives. Now, if that happens, that will be followed by force and by troops. And that is the great danger, because if you have that action taking place in the future, not right now, I don't see it happening immediately, then you will have the counter. So if America comes in and the American troops on the ground, boots on the ground, the Chinese are not going to sit by and ignore that, or the Russians. So suddenly you'll have Pakistan in a similar position to what Afghanistan was a decade or two ago. And that Pakistan has to be very careful about that. It is a very dangerous world we are entering into now. And Pakistan's diplomats have to be at their A game in order to cope with the situation.
Do you think that with growing American interests in Balochistan, does China see alternative BRI routes? Because the impression being given to the global world is that Balochistan is ungovernable, and these separatist groups, these terrorists, they control the traffic, they control what comes in and what goes out. So do you think that China, since they've been talking with Afghans, since they've been at talks with the Chabahars and the Iranians, do you think that they are looking at the alternative routes for their BRI initiatives?
Well, you can change politics, but you can't change geography. And Pakistan's geopolitical position is based in its geography. And if you look at the map of the world, you'll see how convenient this road and belt project of China is, coming from Xinjiang through Pakistan and up to Gwadar. And it literally changes the map of Asia, because you can bring economic goods down, you can bring raw materials down, you can bring troops down from China straight to Gwadar. And then you control the Straits of Hormuz, and virtually you're changing the map of the Middle East. So that is a very important project for China, and that is why China has continued to support Pakistan and continue to urge Pakistan to control the law and order in order to proceed with this economic planning. Now, at the same time, people understand that its Achilles heel is vulnerable in Balochistan, and that's why you have these problems in Balochistan. That is why Pakistan should have worked much harder 10 years ago, not now, much harder to calm down Baloch elements and involve them, bring them on board so that they become partners, not as marginalized groups who project is imposed on them, but as partners who will see and are seeing economic benefits for them in order to allow this to proceed. That is the challenge of Pakistan.
Definitely, that's the biggest challenge. But Pakistan has made some diplomatic achievements. It's just recent past, right after 10th May, we have been able to get America side with us. We've been able to get India more isolated in the diplomatic regime. And India and China are not definitely going well. But we've just recently seen that Indians are trying to persuade China. And we have just recently seen that Indian officials have made a visit to China to talk themselves out. with Baloch separatist groups and terrorists being labeled as terrorists by the United States, do you think does that change anything for India and Israeli interests? Because now it is reported globally that India and Israel are both responsible for terrorism in Balochistan. Do you think does that change anything for the terrorist activities in Balochistan?
Well, your question itself reflects the complexity of the situation. So you already mentioned two or three of the big powers of the world. You've got China, USA, Russia is also involved, India, an emerging big power. And I'm defining big power by Professor John Mersheimer's definition of the great powers and their rivalries. The question is this. India has taken certain initiatives, understanding that it's a changing dynamic and understanding that this is the soft underbelly of Pakistan. And in order to embarrass Pakistan, embarrass China, it needs to continue to put the heat through Balochistan. And it's now reaching out to China as maybe a sulking from the United States or rebuffing the United States or showing its displeasure with the United States. But yes, in fact, Prime Minister Modi is planning to visit China and reaching out to China. These are the movements taking place. These are diplomatic movements. But Pakistan has been very busy also. And here you must give credit to Pakistan because it's been quite shrewd in balancing its initiatives in Washington. And you're right, it's shown a great deal of success. President Trump has responded very positively. As we know, he invited Field Marshal Munir to lunch at the White House, which is a rare honor. And he was then recently again invited to Tampa and received by the CENTCOM, the American Central Command for the Army. And generally, the trade tariffs, the imposition of the sums, which the Indians were very upset about because he first imposed 25% on them, then increased it to 50%, and Pakistan, in sharp contrast, did not have those high figures. So India has been very active in trying to counter this, maybe overactive, maybe hyperactive, and Pakistan has been, at least in this movement, quite cool and sensible. So Pakistan is very aware of these moves. It's like a chess game. They're making their moves, and Pakistan is making its move. And that's why you're seeing how belligerent the Indian media is. You only have to switch on the Indian media to get the answer to your question, and you'll see that they're really semi-hysterical in how they're responding to these movements.
I mean, you've been humble in calling them semi-hysterical. I mean, I have a huge respect for this, but they have been literally yelling at the pitch of their voice, and they have been calling it a Pakistani game to get a better deal from China, because Pakistan has always been doing that. That's what they claim. And they all have been saying that Pakistan is trying to lure into the American rose and just get a better deal from China. I'm not going to ask you to comment on that, but my last question about this whole thing, that Pakistan is definitely, like you said, is very happy with America siding with Pakistan. But with America coming into Balochistan and calling it out that Balochistan have rich resources and they need to extract them out, they are going after oil and minerals and whatnot. Would China be happy, or should they be happy?
I think, again, it's a very good question, because I was wondering how China would respond. Now, normally, every nation responds with an element of how we respond as human beings. So there's an element of anger, jealousy, and so on. But I've found that the Chinese have been very understanding. So with the developments in Washington, the recent developments, the warming of relations, I know that Pakistani diplomats have been to China and assured them and explained to them what is happening, and got the assurance from China that that's fine and there's no problem here. It's not a conflict of interest. So in that sense, I think Pakistan has secured both fronts, the American front and the Chinese. And that is good diplomacy, because Pakistan must protect its own interests in terms of the state. The problem is largely Indian now, because Indians are continuing that hostility to the point we constantly hear rumors that there may be another round in the war, that it is not a ceasefire, but that is going to Sindoor will continue, and you may have another round of military engagement with Pakistan. And of course, on the other front, the cultural front, and to me as a scholar, that's more depressing than anything else. They are very actively engaged in wiping out Muslim history in India. Now, you may say it doesn't matter very much, entire generation of Indians is growing up not having heard of the Mughals. And I heard Irfan Habib, one of the most famous Indian historians, very famous Aligarh professor, who gave it. It's on video, so you can see it on Google, in which he talked about Akbar the Great, Akbar-e-Azam, who's been removed from history. So if you were an Indian student and you're reading history, you would not even hear of Akbar. Now, why I'm mentioning all this is that all this has long-term implications. So the earlier policy of India, where there was an attempt to create a secular, inclusive polity and society from vision taken from Gandhi and Nehru and so on, has now been abandoned, and you have Modi's vision, which is purely ethnic-based and very exclusivist. So that will have greater ramifications for India's relationship with Pakistan and how it will deal with Pakistan. So again, these are huge issues facing us. And once you include China and America, and Russia will certainly be interested in Iran, you have an area, that's the Pakistan area, which will be fraught with danger and will need all the wisdom and all the brilliance in its leadership. That is the question for the people of Pakistan, who they will have representing them at that level.
Ambassador Akbar Ahmed Saab, thank you so much for joining in. It's really insightful, and I would appreciate your calm and poise, because this is a Balochistan issue is definitely something which every Pakistani gets a little bit, I would say, jazbati, but you kept your calm. So thank you so much for joining in and enlightening us with your generous feedback. Thank you so much.
I wrote an article on Balochistan, and I was interviewed by a leading Baloch journalist, and the title was "We've Run Out of Time," and that was about 12 years back. I pointed out that it's very important to take steps now before they begin to become a problem and explode in the future. And the problem is, as I said, no one really reads and no one thinks about these issues in the long term. So I hope our conversation will have an impact on policymakers.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. Let's hope so. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for joining in. Absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Shawad sir.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Akbar Ahmed Saab, for this amazing and insightful discussion. And thank you for your engagement. It's absolute an honor to have you on our show. And we will, inshallah, keep you having again on the same show. Thank you so much. Well, that's all from the Global Script. Keep watching Ocean News.